Alright, my name is Garrett Cormer, and my poem was titled The Approach, and this is my revision process and kind of my writing process as well. For the poem, I started with Future Tense by Charles Wright, and we did a writing between the lines assignment. And for this assignment, really, we would sum up the poem and then kind of add our own stanza to the end of it. So I will start off by reading Charles Wright's poem. His poem begins, "All things in the end are bittersweet, an empty gaze, a little way station just beyond silence. If you can't delight in the everyday, you have no future here. And if you can, no future either. In time, black dog will sniff you out and lick your lean cheeks and lie down beside you, warm, real close, and will not move." Okay, so kind of with my poem, for me, the biggest thing that stood out in that was the black dog, and I wanted to expand on that imagery. And for me, the black dog was really symbolic with death. So I kind of moved from there and then tried to make my poem around the black dog. So my poem begins, The Approach, draft 1. Endings are broken, a wasted moment, a worthless pause. The day-to-day moves slowly to seemingly meaningless ends. Regardless of circumstance, the black dog can track for miles. Eventually, it follows your steps, creeping closer until it's by your side. The dog's teeth aren't sharp. His bark is loud by his companion's choice. His movements are subtle, each step calculated, some large, others short, sometimes a leap. Eventually, he matches pace, his cold fur brushes against. So really with my poem, I kind of expanded on Charles Wright and took it in that direction. And initially, when I brought it to the class, there were some good comments and some bad comments. It was definitely mixed emotions on it. So one of the good things that I kind of got applauded for was the double entendre. When I have the dog's teeth aren't sharp, his bark is loud by his companion's choice. People like that because there was a certain duality to it. And with the duality, it could kind of expanded on the line, making it more important. After I explained the idea, people really liked the idea. But initially, I would say most people in the class didn't understand what I was talking about at all. So then another thing people liked and some disliked was the ambiguity of the ending. The ending and his cold fur brushes against is kind of vague, and unless you really understand the metaphor of the dog, you're not going to understand what exactly I'm talking about. So then bad, my punctuation throughout my initial draft was really bad. Missed periods, I have commas that aren't there, I have unnecessary added parts. Context clues to the meaning. I really didn't talk much about the dog in the first stanza, so when that showed up, people were almost confused on what that had to do with the initial start of the poem. And then pacing. I added some unnecessary words throughout the poem, and I think those kind of ruined my pacing and kind of slowed it down, making it kind of a difficult read. So when I looked into revision, I looked up Juan Felipe Herrera, and he talked about the 10 batteries or 10 things that you can do to really improve your poetry and revision. And one quote that he said that I really liked is it text or is it art? Text, if we get caught up in the briars and bramble of language, slide toward art, it's going to be about white space on the page. And then he really stressed which is more important to you as a writer? Do you want it to be more about art, or do you want it to be more about text? And finding middle ground. For me, I really wanted to find middle ground in my writing. I didn't want it to be so vague that no one knew what was going on, but I wanted it to have basically enough written where people could get the idea, but still have to think on it. Another quote he said was, "Let the poem write itself. Remember, we're not writing a paper." And for me, I'm a science major, so when I think of writing, I really like to have it kind of in an equation, go in a steady movement, and I really felt like stepping away from that would improve my poem's strength. So when writing feels forced, you'll never be proud of it. That's another thing he kind of reiterated throughout his speech, and I think I agree with that. So I definitely took that into consideration during my revision. Okay, so this is my second draft of it. I actually ended up doing it again after that. In my second draft, I really wanted to give more context clues in the first stanza onto the dog. So you can see that. I'll read the part that I have in red there. I changed it to "Grim howls in the distance, deafening but diluted by experiences, so busy it's rarely seen coming." And then in the last stanza I added, "Each step calculated, predetermined by his master, the deadly canine creeps closer, eventually he matches pace." And I really added that. The deadly canine, I wanted to allude more that the dog was death. And then in the top, "Grim howls" was another allusion I wanted to put in there to kind of egg the reader on to determine if the dog was deaf. So then, revision 2, one of the things I did was the book activity, and the book activity really challenged you to compose your poem down to one word or one line that would really like sum up what you're trying to say. So after I determined it was deaf, I kind of looked at what I had and what I saw, and I saw that there are necessarily things that didn't really lead to that conclusion, and I tried to eliminate those things in my revision. So then revision 2, I met with Professor Gingrich. She told me to improve on my pacing. I had unnecessary words that really weren't important. She said expand where it's still unclear. I had areas of my poem that she thought was kind of unclear, kind of vague. And then eliminate unnecessary words. There were a few words in my final that I kind of just cut out because they weren't necessary to understanding what I was trying to say. So this is my final, and as you can see, the endings are broken. I added a dash to kind of show that endings are broken rather than a concrete period. So my poem reads, for my final, endings are broken, grim howls in the distance, diluted by experiences, so busy, it's rarely seen coming. The black dog can track for miles. Eventually it follows your steps, creeping closer. The dog's teeth aren't sharp. His bark is loud by individual decision. His movements are subtle, calculated, predetermined by his master. The deadly canine creeps closer. Eventually he matches pace. His cold fur brushes against. So that's really my final piece and kind of the steps I took to get there. Revision was really important for me because I think initially, especially my first stanza, was kind of vague and all over the place. And through revision, I really focused in on what I was trying to say and made it more clear as a poet and as a writer. Thank you. Any questions?
No questions? Okay.